So, Avengers Doomsday is on the way. The culmination of Marvel's Multiverse saga, everything they've been building towards since Endgame, with characters from all across the Marvel Universe finally coming together, like the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the X-Men, Spider-Man, maybe. Is Spider-Man in this one? Actually, I don't even know. And if you want to get a head start on some of these characters, concepts, and stories before the movie comes out, luckily there's a very easy way to do that. Reading comics! You never have to do homework before you see a superhero movie, but I think that having an understanding of the stories that inspire these movies allows you to have a greater appreciation for not just the movies, but also the history and artistry that goes into creating these characters. Also, so you can brag to your friends that you know more than them. So here are 10 comics to read before you see Avengers Doomsday. This movie looks like it's going to be putting a lot of emphasis on the X-Men and especially Cyclops. I even got to see his costume on display at San Diego Comic-Con this year, which is why the first book you need to read before Avengers Doomsday is Batman Year One, so you can see the origin of Cyclops and his most famous protege. This video is sponsored by Casetify. Dr. Doom wears his fancy armor not just to cover up his disfigured face, but also to protect himself and look cool doing it, which is why Casetify makes phone cases designed to not just be stylish, but also durable. They have a ton of different cases that fit a whole variety of phone types, whether if you have iPhone or Android, from different styles like the slim compact line, a mirror finish, to the balanced impact series, or the bounce series for extreme protection. And each style has even more customization on top of that, like a kickstand that pops out from around the camera ring, or card holders and grips that snap onto the back. They sent me a few of their original designs, and the artwork on these is gorgeous, but they also have collaborations from tons of different characters and IPs. Like this one from their Batman collection, it's got this kind of like smoky transparent effect going on, and it looks like a ticket stub for Batman 89. I think that's very fun. They have a whole Marvel collection, One Piece, Dragon Ball, Tamagotchi, you name it. They even have artist collections like this one from their Andy Warhol collection. It's like a little soup can. That's fun. I like that. They offer a 6-month warranty and fast shipping. Mine also came with the snappy mirror card holder stand, which attaches magnetically to the back of the case with MagSafe. And it's really convenient for just carrying a couple cards without needing a whole wallet. And also it's a little kickstand. That's fun. Check out Casetify using the link down below or scan the QR code on screen for 15% off your order. Thanks to Casetify for sponsoring this video. As always, you don't have to know every single thing about a comic before you start reading. Most stories will give you everything that you need. And if you're ever confused, there's no shame in looking something up. You can find the books I talk about at your local comic store, or I'll try to put affiliate links down below that help out the channel, or with the Marvel Unlimited subscription. The first book you should read before Avengers is the original Secret Wars from 1984 by Jim Shooter and Mike Zeck. The premise is pretty straightforward. A cosmic being called the Beyonder takes a bunch of Marvel's greatest heroes and villains and transports them to a planet called Battle World. He tells them to fight each other for his amusement and promises whoever wins can have whatever wish they want. So you have the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, all thrown together against villains like Doc Ock, Ultron, Galactus, and most importantly for this video, Dr. Doom. And while everybody else is busy fighting each other, Doom basically decides that he doesn't want to play this game and instead wants to steal the Beyonder's power for himself. Funnily enough, this event was just made to sell toys, like literally it was only created for a Mattel line, but it still ended up being incredibly influential and is even the first appearance of Spider-Man's black suit. Now, this book will likely be less important for Doomsday than it is for Secret Wars next year, but at the very least, having an understanding of what the story is can help you appreciate not only what Doomsday is setting up, but also some of the other books on this list. Because one book that I think that Doomsday will be taking a lot of inspiration from is Jonathan Hickman's time on Avengers and New Avengers from 2014. Most notably the tail end of those runs, the climactic arc known as Time Runs Out. Hickman's entire run across these books is outstanding. Genuinely, it's some of the greatest character work that the Avengers have ever had. It follows the Avengers and the Illuminati as the multiverse begins to collapse. Parallel universes start colliding with each other in events called incursions, where two Earths occupy the same space and both universes are destroyed unless one of them is destroyed first. Every second there's a new trolley problem with these ethical implications on a massive scale, and those impossible choices and moral dilemmas start to completely fracture the Avengers. Everyone knows that the multiverse is ending, but nobody can agree on how to stop it, and the decisions that they end up making leads to some of my favorite character beats in the entire Avengers history, like when Namor destroys the first Earth by himself while everyone else is arguing about it. And based on what we've seen in the Doomsday trailer and what the MCU has been building up these past few years, these two runs seem like they're going to be a pretty direct blueprint for what they're doing at Doomsday. If nothing else, because Doomsday is going to lead into Secret Wars next year, and Hickman's Avengers was the lead into Secret Wars from 2015 by Jonathan Hickman and Asad Ribic. Not to be confused with the original Secret Wars or Secret Wars 2. This book isn't really a sequel to the original Secret Wars as much as it is a completely new story that takes the basic concept and reimagines it. It's essentially the conclusion to the massive story that Hickman had been telling for years across Fantastic Four, Avengers, and New Avengers, taking the iconography of the original Secret Wars and turning it into like a grand finale for his passion project. And while all the context of his other runs definitely makes the story richer, you can absolutely just pick up Secret Wars and read it on its own, which is how I first read it. I see the MCU Secret Wars taking a lot more inspiration from this story than the original 84 version, if for no other reason than the 2015 version is a more modern interpretation, but also it has a much stronger emotional core to build a movie around. After the final incursion destroys the Marvel Universe, Dr. Doom manages to salvage what's left, taking the Beyonder's power and pieces of different universes and combining them into a new world called Battle World, which is, reference, yeah, whatever. And Doom, being the guy that he is, decides decides to become God Emperor Doom over this new reality. Meanwhile, the original Reed Richards manages to survive the destruction of the multiverse and challenges his rule. So much of the story fundamentally revolves around the relationship between Dr. Doom and Reed Richards, which is a foundation that Hickman started building as far back as his Fantastic Four run from 2009. Despite 2015's Secret Wars on the surface looking like some multiversal civil war where action figures are just smashed together, at its core, it's a very personal character study about these two men who have had a decades-long rivalry finally coming to a head. And it's a little bit frustrating that a book that's as good as this is being relegated to just another multiverse event, when there's so much more to it than that. Oh, also, Doom rips out Thanos' skeleton. Everybody loves that part. It's all I talk about. But Doomsday looks like it's going to be pulling from more than just Secret Wars or Secret Wars adjacent events. In fact, one of the most notable things we see in the trailer is that the Avengers and the X-Men are going to be pitted against each other, at least in some fashion. Which is why the next book is Avengers vs. X-Men from 2012, written by Brian Michael Bendis, Jason Aaron, Ed Brubaker, Matt Fraction, and Jonathan Hickman, with art primarily by John Romita Jr., Adam Kubert, and Olivier Coipel. Oh boy, a lot of names on this book. The story revolves around the Phoenix Force returning to Earth, and Cyclops believes that it could be the key to restoring the mutant population after they were decimated by Scarlet Witch during House of M. While the Avengers see an incredibly dangerous cosmic entity heading towards Earth and think that shouldn't happen. So, as you might expect, the Avengers and the X-Men, they versus each other. Is the name of the book. This event is considered one of the most controversial Marvel events in recent years, mainly because a lot of the decisions felt very editorially driven, especially with 5 different writers. They're good writers. They're very good writers, but you know, there's 5 of them. In the treatment of Cyclops as an antagonistic role when he's arguably right about what the Phoenix Force could mean for mutant kind is frustrating. The MCU has actually adapted beats from the story in the past, like in Black Panther 2 when Namor floods Wakanda, but it's also one of the definitive modern stories about what happens when these two teams fundamentally disagree, which makes it pretty relevant for Doomsday. So those are the stories that I think the MCU is going to be inspired by when it comes to the plot, but what about arguably the more important part, the characters? Because this movie is going to have 2 rival teams of Avengers, Wakanda and all those characters, the Fantastic Four, the Fox Universe X-Men, and the return of Steve Rogers. Starting with the X-Men, honestly, there's a whole standalone video here for where to start reading X-Men comics, but for now, I'm just going to recommend Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon and John Cassaday from 2004. This is probably the most recommended modern X-Men run because it's probably one of the easiest jumping on points for new readers. The book follows Cyclops and Emma Frost leading a team of X-Men with Wolverine, Beast, and Kitty Pryde with the goal of basically re-establishing the X-Men as superheroes to astonish the world, which is why it's called Astonishing. The first story revolves around the discovery of a supposed mutant cure and eventually the return of Colossus, and specifically for Doomsday, that run puts such a heavy emphasis on Cyclops to the point where it's essentially the modern standard for how the character is to be written. This is Scott as the true and natural leader, centering him in the story as opposed to pushing him off to the background and focus on Wolverine. Honestly, if you want to start reading X-Men, I say start with the original Lee and Kirby stuff, and then when you get sick of that, move on to Giant Size by Len Wein and Dave Cockrum, which is what reinvented the series. Then read Chris Claremont's run for as long as you want. That's where some of the most iconic stories happen, like Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past. Then jump to New X-Men by Grant Morrison and Frank Whiteley. Read that as long as you want. Then after that, Astonishing, and then jump to the Krakoan Age with House of X and Powers of 10 by Jonathan Hickman, Pepe Larraz, and R.B. Silva. That's oversimplifying a ridiculous amount of good X-Men stories, but if you've never read X-Men before, it's a very quick roadmap to get you started. Alongside Robert Downey Jr., one of the biggest draws of Doomsday is that Chris Evans is going to be returning as Steve Rogers, and I'm excited to see him come back to the role as much as the next guy, but I just know that that means Sam Wilson's Captain America is going to get pushed to the side. I love Sam Wilson as a character, and Brave New World really was not the best showcase for him as Cap, so the next book I recommend before Doomsday is Captain America Sam Wilson by Nick Spencer and Daniel Acuna from 2015. This picks up after Sam has already taken over as Captain America, after Steve lost the super soldier serum and was rapidly aged into an old man during Rick Remender's run. Sam decides that Captain America shouldn't just be a neutral symbol who stands above everything. He starts taking public positions on issues he believes in, helping people that the government might not want him helping, and almost immediately discovers that being Captain America means that half the country fucking hates you. Sam has his own politics, his own relationship with the country, and his own idea of what Captain America is supposed to represent. And especially after Brave New World did fuck all with him, I think that this is a really good book to read if you want to understand why Sam actually deserves to be Cap, beyond just Steve gave him the shield. This run actually leads directly into Spencer's run of Steve Rogers Captain America with art by Jesus Saez, and that directly ties to Spencer's Secret Empire from 2017, where it was revealed that Steve was working with Hydra. Now, that decision is a whole can of controversial worms that I don't want to get into today. I get what Spencer was going for, but I'm not a huge fan of turning the guy created by Jewish legends Joe Simon and Jack Kirby specifically as a symbol against Nazis into essentially a Nazi, but there are some people theorizing that Steve in Doomsday is secretly going to be Hydra Cap. He even lifted Mjolnir in the comics like in the trailer, so it's not entirely out of the question, although there was some cosmic cube fuckery going on there. One aspect of Doomsday that I'm really excited about is the Thunderbolts. I mean the new Avengers. I really like the idea of having 2 separate teams vying for the name Avengers, especially with characters like Sam and Bucky on opposing sides. And one book that I think is a big inspiration for this is Dark Avengers by Brian Michael Bendis and Mike Deodato from 2009. The premise for this book is that Norman Osborn of Green Goblin fame has somehow become one of the most trusted men in America after the events of Secret Invasion, and uses his newfound power to put together his own team of Avengers. The team consisted of Osborn as Iron Patriot, the Sentry, Novar as Captain Marvel, as well as several supervillains that are disguised as classic Avengers. Moonstone pretends to be Ms. Marvel, Mac Gargan's Venom pretends to be Spider-Man, Wolverine's disgruntled son Akihiro pretends to be Logan, and my personal favorite, Bullseye, pretends to be Hawkeye. And the fun of the book comes from this dysfunctional team of dangerous lunatics having to maintain the illusion that they're a legitimate team of superheroes. Now, obviously, this isn't really what the Thunderbolts and the new Avengers are. Characters like Bucky and Yelena aren't like villains in the same way as like Bullseye, you know? But I think the core conceit of a team who's being run by someone who's morally dubious and using the Avengers name in order to get public support has quite a bit of overlap and was in some way the inspiration behind the events of Thunderbolts. Dark Avengers literally comes from Thunderbolts. I'm over-explaining it. Also, this book is just very cool. It was actually one of the first Marvel books that I ever read. In Doomsday, we see that Wakanda is going to have a pretty big role alongside the Fantastic Four, which I think is a fun nod to Black Panther first appearing in a Fantastic Four comic. And jumping a little bit ahead of Secret Wars, a few weeks ago at San Diego Comic-Con, Marvel announced that Ryan Coogler will be returning to direct Black Panther 3, with David Johnson taking over the mantle as T'Challa II. It's an announcement that I'm super excited about. I've been a fan of Johnson for a long time, and I'm really excited to see him carry that legacy forward, even if it's technically a different character. So the next book I'm going to recommend is Black Panther by Ta-Nehisi Coates that began in 2016 with art by Brian Stelfreeze. This run is a bit more of a slow burn. It's very dense and political, but I think that's what makes the run stand out for me. The run begins with Wakanda in crisis. After years of catastrophe and invasion, the country is dealing with political unrest and a growing rebellion against the monarchy, forcing T'Challa to confront whether being a good man necessarily gives him the right to rule. It questions what the nation of Wakanda is, and if it should even be a monarchy despite having a just king, if such a thing can even exist. And over the course of the story, it grows more and more until by the end of it, it throws T'Challa into space and he's fighting an intergalactic Wakandan empire. There are a ton of great Black Panther comics you could go with, like Christopher Priest and Mark Texeira's run from 1998, which was enormously influential on basically every version of T'Challa that came afterward. Selfishly, I've just been reading Coates' memoir, Between the World of Me. Okay, I say reading, but I'm listening to the audiobook. I feel like that should count. And so it's been very interesting to read his Black Panther run and seeing him bringing his perspectives on monarchy and power into a character like T'Challa. In terms of the Fantastic Four, honestly, you can't really go wrong with Jonathan Hickman, Steve Epting, and Dale Eaglesham's time in the book from 2009, which is what sets the foundation for 2015 Secret Wars. But if you want something that's a little bit more standalone, but gives you a good idea of who the Fantastic Four are, and also so that this video isn't like 85% Hickman, check out Mark Waid and Mike Waringo's run on Fantastic Four from 2002. Waid's run is one of the best introductions to what makes the Fantastic Four work, and it's an idea that goes to the core of even the original Stan Lee and Jack Kirby stories, and that's that the Fantastic Four are a family. They fight and they bicker. Reed is a husband and a father, Johnny is an annoying brother, Ben is the uncle, Ben is the fun-loving uncle, you know, and they all live together in the Baxter Building. And I especially love Waid's interpretation of Reed. There's this idea really early on in the run that the reason he turned the Fantastic Four into these larger-than-life celebrity superheroes was because he felt guilty for what happened to his family, and he wanted the world to look at them with admiration instead of fear. But you can't talk about the Fantastic Four without talking about the main star of this video and of Doomsday, and that's Dr. Doom. One of the biggest criticisms I've seen leading into Doomsday is that Dr. Doom hasn't been properly built up in the same way that Thanos was, that we know nothing about this character, and why should we be scared of him? So if you want to get an idea of who Doom is as a character and why he's so compelling, Mark Waid's Fantastic Four is also a great pick. If for no other reason, then he is straight up evil in this run. The big Doom story in this run is called Unthinkable, and the basic premise is that Doom finally accepts that he's never going to beat Reed Richards at his own game. So Doom decides to stop trying to play by Reed's rules of science, and instead he turns to something that Reed fundamentally doesn't understand: sorcery. To gain this power, he sacrifices his childhood love. Then he scars Reed's face, sends his son Franklin to hell basically, and turns his daughter into like a magical servant. He's so evil that I'm gonna be honest, I don't even think I'm like doing it justice with the way I describe it. It's the kind of story that says beneath all of Doom's charisma, his sympathetic motivations, and potentially good intentions, at the end of the day, Doom can still be a monster, fueled by nothing more than pettiness and rage. Someone who is completely vile and beyond redemption. Which is why the next book you should read is Infamous Iron Man by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev from 2016. This book follows Victor Von Doom after the events of Hickman's Secret Wars, a story where he fundamentally achieved his ultimate victory, becoming the God Emperor of all creation, a world literally created under his rule. He pulled out Thanos' spine like it was nothing. Remember that? Everybody loves that. And he still felt empty. And so, in the wake of that event, and with Tony Stark not doing so hot after the events of Civil War II, Victor Von Doom builds his own Iron Man armor and tries his hand at being a hero. And the best part is that he's genuinely trying. It's not like a ruse or a trick like the Dark Avengers or anything. Victor is truly trying his best to be a superhero. He's saving people, hunting down bad guys, even giving villains a chance at redemption the same way he had. But as expected, nobody believes him. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't trust him, Ben Grimm tries to bring him down, and even the people Victor tries to help have every reason to assume that this is just just another scheme. I mean, why would they? His name is Dr. fucking Doom, and the book doesn't really ask you to believe it either. It's a story that asks if someone with this much ego and this much blood on his hands can ever actually truly be good. Even if he's being sincere, even if his intentions are good, does that equate to redemption? When Robert Downey Jr. was first cast as Doom, I saw so many people saying, look, oh, they're doing Infamous Iron Man, it's like the comics. And I wanted to claw my eyes out. And the final book that I think you should read before Avengers Doomsday is Books of Doom from 2005 by Ed Brubaker and Pablo Raimondi. This is, for all intents and purposes, the Doctor Doom book. If Wade's run on Fantastic Four says that Doctor Doom is a vile, despicable monster, and Infamous Iron Man asks how a man like that could be redeemed, Books of Doom just asks, who is the man? Behind the mask, who is Victor Von Doom? It's a 6-issue miniseries detailing Doom's life from his perspective, from his childhood to the death of his mother, the accident that scarred his face, his rivalry with Reed Richards, and eventually his rise as the ruler of Latveria. Everything that makes him who he is covered in this book, taking elements from all across his publication history and putting them into one cohesive story. I consider Books of Doom to be one of the all-time greats that everybody should read at least once. If you want to better understand Victor Von Doom, like his origin and who he is as a character and what makes him tick, then you absolutely 1,000,000% should read this comic. It will do you so much more than a couple end credit scenes ever could. Lately, there's been a lot of conversation going around about whether or not someone can call themselves a comic book fan if they don't read comics and only engage with the movies. And if you ask me, I'm not trying to gatekeep here, but I think that this conversation is a little bit silly. In my opinion, it only takes reading one comic to call yourself a comic book fan. You don't have to read everything that's ever been published or even read every new comic that comes out. Hell, I do this for a living and not even I do that. Just one comic. Pick up one book that interests you either as doomsday prep or just for fun. Worst case scenario, you look smarter in front of your friends. But best case, you open up the door into an amazing new world of stories that you never knew existed. But how are you feeling about Avengers Doomsday? What are some other comics you think people should read before it comes out? If you like this video, be sure to the like button and subscribe. Special thanks to Daniel Beggs, FD3XM, and Little Caesars Pizza for joining the spectacular tier of my Patreon and channel members. For $1 a month, you get access to all my videos early and your name in the credits. And for $3, you get exclusive monthly videos where it's just kind of me talking to the camera unedited. This has been Troy Boy 17 coming at you live. Be responsible, and I'll see you around.